Lawlessness. Things everyone ought to know. Law versus legal. This is to personally and independently educate, empower and morale, not scare or demoralize. Authority ambush, authority entrapment. Collusion or extensive unlawful crimes. Legal entrapment, legal ambush, legal fraud, imposed on a human are all largely unknown deceptions and manipulations but used daily in normalized unlawful crime. Admiralty law is not law, it's legal. See trading. It harbors all the corruptions and revoked right to divine law and is the escalated obscurity of justice to allow all the medical frauds. Covert genocide and tyranny going on now, with all the non-accountability measures being used. Admiralty false law is prolifically the beast system of lawlessness. It is that which rose from the sea. It is depicted in its magnitude of global saturation now and was depicted as such via Admiralty Arch monuments, symbolically with the arch being finished in 1912 in London. Straddling the Solstice Line orientated Mall Road, 126 degrees from due south, from the Solstice-orientated Buckingham Palace and Victoria Monument fountain that you won't have been told about or find the specifics about and would need to personally measure it yourself to evidence it. Canon law is a corrupt law, implicated by the Luciferian Vatican, deceived by deceived consent and acquiesce in its usage, it deeming you formally lost dead at sea. Via the Cestui via Act 1666 and a legal corporate entity rather than a human individual identity. The corrupt law was brought in the covert deceptive way during the guise of the Great Fire of London, and bubonic plague pandemic of its day, and as the reused deception being used again today in symbolic Baal fires and historical biological warfare that only the diligent and complicit know about. The Bank of England being founded shortly after, much like the Federal Reserve being founded after the Titanic fire and flu, should indicate the blatant connection and timed succession. Terms of master, grandmaster, Mr., Miss, Mrs. are all terms of status or missed status, missed your opportunity to reclaim your estate, status, title and sovereignty. After it was signed away by your kept naive parents, the Royal Courts of Justice, the High Court, or aka Royal Courts of Justice, is the court created to belong to and protect the public. It is now called and letter-headed the Royal Courts of Justice Group. Note Group, a legal-owned entity, but by an unknown false identity. Check Company House. Court 37. Queen's Bench, was a court where every common man and woman could at any time, 24 hours a day, call on emergency law relief as a permanent public service and public servants' duty to provide if required, in particularly for such authority crimes as harassment, ambush, setup, exploitation, which also included legal ambush and legal entrapment. Court 37 now functions solely on a legally entrapping basis. Escalated to 2017, all initiations to the court can only be done now after gradual escalation to entrapping forms, fees and electronic control using your name in all capitals. Not even giving a simple clear law, legal option. It is now the case that the ultra-convenient COVID-19 ruse excused the system and civil servants to close and withhold the application and services offices so that applications, receipts, stamps, complaints cannot be given and the option of complete cases lost at the discretion of the professionals and detriment of the public, victim of crime. To see a lawmaster before application, which was your public right, and should still be their public duty to provide as a public servant. It is now legally bound by legally entrapping forms and legal fees. The public servant now take the civil servant stance until pressured under questioning. Explain to Court 37 the law and historical evidence of law and your public rights to it and their lawful duty and obligations. They either robotically and repetitively state they are not allowed to give out legally advice, which generally you didn't even ask for. Explain to Court 37 the law and historical evidence of law and your public rights to it and their lawful duty and obligations. They either robotically and repetitively state they are not allowed to give out legally advice, which generally you didn't even ask for. Or, they look blankly tell you they don't know what to suggest and don't know the law themselves, just the list of policy of clear double standards that avoids accountability. There are numerous narcissistic and paid agents, I refer to as court jesters, actors that are well informed from Masonic, governmental and corporate different levels that play victim, play savior, or play activist, play two-faced contradictions. They will deflect, detour, distract, discredit you, sabotage, surround, isolate, divide and conquer, manipulate by any means possible, and to any level that they are capable, so be vigilant and be sure to warn others. Complete facades of cases have been done, court and with no application submitted before, with court professionals recorded participating. Trust no one. Avoid or test thoroughly everyone you have to interact with. The Public High Court, White Book, plus, Public Library, the public access requirement to their corrupt law is meant to be made available at every court. In principle it should be in every library. Now it's the opposite, guys, NST all principles, and that nationally there is only one that is known of, and that is vastly hidden in the maze of the royal courts of justice in an under-stair cupboard type room for a public service. It is undisclosed, has to be found, is only open on intervals, so nationally now through COVID-19, closed off to the public, and now restricted to the time you can see it. So you cannot ascertain the minute empowering disclosures that are like a needle in a haystack, amidst the 2 books of thousands of pages of distraction. The opposite of what law is supposed to be. This debilitation is profound and